Questions. Questions orales.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has lost control, but he is clinging to power. We knew that he had lost control of the voters, of immigration, of spending, of inflation, of the cost of housing. But now he has lost control of his cabinet. The Vice Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance has stepped down, and she stepped down hours before presenting Canada's fall economic statement with an enormous deficit. When will we have an election?
L'honorable leader du gouvernement à la Chambre des communes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government is looking forward to presenting the economic statement this afternoon, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the member for University Rosedale for everything that she has done for this country and everything that she will continue to do for this country. Her accomplishments make quite a long list, and her place in history is assured, and we are very proud of everything that she has done for this government.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Prime, yet he clings to power. He's lost control of immigration, lost control of the borders, lost control of spending, deficits, inflation, housing costs. In fact, his former, apparently, finance minister was trying to get spending under control by capping the deficit at an already crazy $40 billion. But he took Carbon Tax Carney's advice and pushed her beyond that guardrail and was trying to throw her off the cliff. She's now resigned minutes before presenting her fall economic update. This cannot go on. When will we have a carbon tax elected?
Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our government looks forward to presenting the fall economic statement later this afternoon. But I would also like to take this opportunity to extend my gratitude for all that the member from University Rosedale has accomplished for this country and will continue to do for this country. She has played an integral role in this government. First of all, standing up for Canada and defending NAFTA, bringing forward universal childcare, and the incredible work that she has done in defending Ukraine. We are very grateful for all that she's contributed to this government and to Canada. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
To the finance minister. Who are you?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at a time when Canadians are struggling, we are happy to bring forward measures that are going to assist them. Things like the GST tax cut that took place starting this past Saturday, going until February 15th. And while the Conservative leader and the members of his caucus stay focused on us, we're going to stay focused on helping.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it was a serious question. Who is the finance minister? After the finance minister's resignation this morning, automatically the industry minister became Minister of Finance. And congratulations. But he immediately quit. After him, in the line of precedence, it was the two Randys. Well, they don't want it. So now we don't have a finance minister just a couple of minutes before the fall economic statement will be presented. So where's the minister?
The Honourable Leader of the Government,
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said, our government is looking forward to presenting the fall economic statement later this afternoon. There are important measures in that update, measures that are important for Canadians. It's time for the Leader of the Conservatives to recognize that while he's focused on us, we are focused on Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, just to underline the chaos we're faced with here, the finance minister resigned the day she was to present the fall budget, which was going to contain a massive deficit overrun. The job then went automatically to the industry minister, who immediately resigned, like on the spot, which then went down the line, and the next person in order was the famous two Randys. And they're not available to the job either. We're now less than 2 hours away from the fall economic update. Why won't the Prime Minister have the courage to come in here, present it himself, and put it for a confidence vote tonight?
To remind all members, as I did during statements today, for members to be careful not to refer to other sitting members by their names, but to use their titles or to use their voting rights. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to play politics in this place, we look forward to presenting the fall economic statement later this afternoon that will have a series of important measures for Canadians. Things that are going to help them with the affordability challenges, that are going to put Canada, Canadian jobs, and the Canadian economy first. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I would like to ask the Honourable Member from St. Albert, Edmonton, to please not take the floor when he is not recognized by the Speaker.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. We already knew that between 20 and 40 Liberal MPs no longer had confidence in the Prime Minister. We also knew that 8 ministers would be jumping ship. Today, the Minister of Finance decided to step down instead of presenting the fall economic statement. She wrote, black and white, that she disagrees with the Prime Minister on the best path forward for Canada. So she has also taken away her confidence in the Prime Minister. We are watching this government, this Liberal government, fall apart, and it's pretty ugly to see. Will the Prime Minister call an election? The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank my colleague for his question. As I mentioned, as a government, we are looking forward to presenting the fall economic statement later this afternoon. There are important measures in there for Canadians when it comes to affordability in particular, and we are exclusively focused on Canadians, and we will continue to protect Canadian economy and Canadian jobs. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The Deputy Prime Minister has quit because of the Liberals' electoral handouts. She said that Canadians know when we're working for them and when we're focused on ourselves. Mr. Speaker, people can see through their political games. Quebecers don't want these political handouts. Businesses don't want them. Even the Finance Minister doesn't want them. The only person who wants these is the NDP leader and the Prime Minister of Canada. Will they finally stop sabotaging Canada's economy for, so they can buy votes? The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And once again, I would like to thank my colleague for his question. Cutting the GST on essentials for Canadians is something that's important for many Canadians. And I've heard from many people in my riding who have said that this is something that is important for them. Restaurants, small and medium-sized businesses say that this is something that's important for them, and we are proud of having put that motion forward.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
People can't afford their groceries. People can't find a home to call their own. And the Conservatives are laughing.
Order! The Honourable Member from Burnaby South from the top, please.
Canadians literally cannot afford the groceries they need. They can't afford to find a home to call their own. And now Trump, buddies of the conservatives, MAGA conservatives love this guy, Trump is threatening hundreds of thousands of jobs in Canada. And the Prime Minister is more focused on himself, on infighting. The Prime Minister cannot remain in that position. Will he resign?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, this is not the time for slogan. This is not the time for partisanship. This is not a time to make jokes, Mr. Speaker. This is about rallying for Canadians. This is a time where Canadians needs to know that this House and all the members are standing behind them, that we're going to invest in Canadians, that we're going to invest in this country, that we're going to invest in our workers, and that we're going to invest in our industry, Mr. Speaker, and that we're going to prepare Canada to be the best prepared to be able to deal with our U.S. friends. Mr. Speaker, this is the time where we show that we're all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
So I'll ask again in French. Les gens de la misère.
People are having a very hard time paying for groceries. Young people can't find affordable housing. And beyond that, we have the threat of Trump's tariffs. And that's putting hundreds of thousands of jobs in Canada in danger. And instead of dealing with issues that are important for Canadians, the Prime Minister is dealing with fighting in his own party. It's clear that the Prime Minister cannot continue. Will he resign today, yes or no? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, as I said, this isn't a time for jokes. This isn't a time for partisanship. It's certainly not a time for conservative slogans, Mr. Speaker. It's time, Mr. Speaker, to work together as parliamentarians to defend Canada, to invest in Canada, to defend our workers, to invest in our industry. And, Mr. Speaker, I call on all members of this House to do their civic duty to work for the good of Canada so that we can face the incoming American administration. Mr. Speaker, today we are all Canadians. Let's work together.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the NDP leader is absolutely right. This cannot continue. This Prime Minister cannot go on like this. Housing costs have doubled. Food bank use has doubled. The debt has doubled. Gun crime has doubled. And now we face troubling tariff threats from a president who can see weakness coming from a mile away. The Prime Minister must leave this job, but there's only one person who can remove him, and that's the leader of the NDP. Will he put the country ahead of his pension and vote for a carbon tax election now?
Eric? Although the preamble to that question dealt with the administration of government, the question itself did not, and the chair has made it clear that we're not doing that. The honourable member from Thornhill.
Prime Minister has lost control. The Prime Minister's own deputy quit just hours before her economic statement, all of a sudden saying, Canadians know when we're focused on ourselves, and describing a newfound disdain for costly political gimmicks. Those are her quotes. This after her own political rival, Mark Carney, wrote the fall economic statement full of things that she didn't want to present. The old boys club isn't in charge. Canadians are. And it's time for credible leadership in the seriousness of this moment, not the fake feminism of this phony Prime Minister. It's time for Canadians to decide. So will anyone or everyone over there finally agree?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned earlier, we are looking forward today to presenting the fall economic statement that is going to have a series of important measures for Canadians. At a time like this, it is important that all of us band together, united as Canadians, to make sure that we are doing everything we can to protect the Canadian economy, protect Canadian jobs, and to stand up for Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, they can't even stand by each other. Hours before delivering the fiscal update, the finance minister resigned. She lost confidence in the Prime Minister. Last night, the failed housing minister and the worst immigration minister in the history of this country also resigned. A couple of Randys, and now they're up to 9 ministers that need to be replaced. He's lost control of the government. The party of backroom boys is over. The backbench should look up from their laptops, and the NDP leader shouldn't be the only one in this House with confidence in the Prime Minister. Present the statement and call a vote today.
Hear, hear.
Again, I'm just going to, for the last time, order. Order. I'm going to ask members once again to remind themselves not to refer to members by their first names. The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure who she's talking about, but I'm still here for now. I can guarantee you, Mr. Speaker, that there are two kinds of people who run for office in politics. There are people who want to do something, and there are people who want to be somebody. And I can tell you, on our side of the House, we want to do things. We want to build the houses to make sure families can afford to keep over their heads. We want to make sure families can afford to keep their food on the table to feed their kids. We want to make sure people can find a job to go to that gives them a sense of pride and allows them to contribute to their communities. On the Conservative side, their guy has been writing essays about why he should be Prime Minister since he was a teenager.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
On Friday, the Prime Minister told Canada's first female finance minister that she was fired, but to keep sweet and present their wildly overspent budget on Monday so that he and an unelected man, Mark Carbon Tax Carney, wouldn't have to take the blame for their broken budget. He then, unbothered, released a video of him making cinnamon buns to get the women folks vote. How can any woman in that caucus defend that man instead of calling for an election now?
Hear, hear.
The order. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't realize cinnamon buns were a gendered food, but what I would say is that her question says more about how that member and Conservative members view women in this country than anything else. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Are facing violence in the streets. They can't afford groceries. They can't afford to buy presents for their kids for the holidays. They can't afford anything. Canadian women are far worse off under this fake feminist Prime Minister. And now he fired Canada's first female finance minister because she dared question him. That sounds pretty familiar. No strong women exist in that caucus. Why would any woman defend this man instead of calling for an election?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for that member opposite, but I think she's speaking from her own experience with the Leader of the official opposition when she said that she wasn't going to support him and then spent a year in the hinterlands, Mr. Speaker. But what I will say is that when it comes to actually doing things that support women, we have done that on this side of the House. Whether it's affordable child care that is making it possible for hundreds of thousands of women to join the workforce, making contraceptions free, or the Canada Child Benefit that is helping families pay the bills. And what do Conservative members of Parliament do every time? They vote against them. So actions speak louder than words, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has lost control. He's lost control of the economy. He's lost control of immigration. He's lost control of so many files. And now he's lost control of the government. It's long past time for an election. This Prime Minister has sat too long here for any good that he has been doing. In the name of God, will he go to Rideau Hall, call an election, and end the chaos?
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you well know, and as every member in this place knows, just because a Conservative Member of Parliament wishes something does not mean that it actually happens. But what happened over the past couple of weeks, Mr. Speaker, is the government secured the confidence of this House. And the government does enjoy the confidence of this House, Mr. Speaker, and that is why we will be presenting the fall economic statement later today, which we look forward to sharing with Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie.
On assist.
We're watching a historic moment here. The Deputy Prime Minister quit, saying that she disagreed with the Prime Minister on the path forward for Canada. The Deputy Prime Minister no longer has confidence in this Prime Minister to govern. Her lack of confidence is added to that of 8 other ministers. The Prime Minister can't claim to have the confidence of the people if he doesn't even have the confidence of his own ministers. Will he do the democratic thing and put his future in the hands of the people and call elections? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, I know that all of our colleagues want to work for Quebec and the entire country, Mr. Speaker. At a time like this, what Quebecers expect is not to hear fiery slogans, Mr. Speaker. They expect us to work together. This is a moment where we need to work together to prepare Quebec and Quebec's industry to face the American administration. We need to prepare Quebec and the rest of Canada to win in the 21st century economy, and I can tell all Quebecers that that's what we're doing on this side of the House. That's what we wake up and do every day, Mr. Speaker. We get up to serve Canadians. We want to be there for Quebecers and the whole country. We'll continue to do so. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. In 2020, the Prime Minister made Bill Morneau step down because he wasn't spending enough, and he put the current Deputy Prime Minister in his place. She has now quit because she wasn't spending enough. Imagine how much the third Finance Minister is going to have to spend to keep their job. They're going to have to go over to the NDP to find somebody who's ready to spend that much. Seriously, this is a disastrous economic statement. Will the Prime Minister... The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers know that the Bloc likes to pick a fight, Mr. Speaker. But today, Mr. Speaker, the government is going to present a fall economic statement, Mr. Speaker, in which will show that we're there for Canada's industry and for workers across the country. At a time like now, Mr. Speaker, what Quebecers and Canadians expect from everyone, and especially from the Bloc Québécois, is that we be there to defend their interests, that we be there for families, for seniors. That's exactly what we're doing on this side of the House, and I hope the Bloc will stand up and support the government, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The government is getting ready to table an economic update without a finance minister. Nobody, not even the Liberals, wants to wear this economic statement. It's the ultimate proof that we can't go forward with a $60 billion deficit just to offer political gimmicks. A deficit for measures that neither Quebecers nor businesses have asked for. Measures in this have been denounced by economists, including in the finance department. It's not surprising that nobody in the Liberal Party wants to be responsible for it. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing and stop with these measures? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, we want to move forward. If the Bloc wants to go backwards, that's up to them. But on this side, we're going to go forward, Mr. Speaker. Why? Because families in Quebec, Mr. Speaker, who are watching us, need a government that's there for them, that's there for dental care, for kids, for seniors, for industry, for Quebec, for Canada. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we'll continue to fight. We will continue to fight every day for all Canadians because the country deserves that we be there to stand up for it, Mr. Speaker. I would invite members to please not take the floor when other members have been recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, Everyone knows it. The Prime Minister has lost control. He's lost control of immigration. He's lost control of the cost of housing. He's lost control of his caucus. And finally, he's lost control of public spending. And he's lost the confidence of his Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. The Prime Minister has caused a huge amount of damage for Canada. We know it. Most Canadians know it. But, now it's time to say enough. Can the Prime Minister please take his responsibility and call an election today? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, the government later today will be presenting its economic plan. It's a solid plan for Canadians, which will ensure fairness, it will ensure good jobs, and it will continue to make sure that Canadians' economic interests are respected. The Honourable Member for Charleville St. Charles. Mr. Speaker, I can't believe that the Minister believes the words he's saying. We know that this doesn't make any sense. The Finance Minister quit this morning because of this. She knows that none of this makes any sense. And the Finance Minister said that given the threat that we're facing, the way that we do it, that we deal with that will define us for a generation. We know that Canadians are smart. Will the Prime Minister call an election today? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. It's time, Mr. Speaker, to put that partisanship aside and to rally as Canadians together, because Canada will have to face a protectionist threat from the other side of the border. And we are preparing for that, Mr. Speaker. We will have a solid plan, and I hope that we will be able to count on that member and his party when Canada will face that threat. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, what's happening is serious and it's unprecedented. The Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, quit just a few hours before the fall economic statement. It's just a bomb that's gone off, because even in the United States and around the world, people are talking about this, and in a bad way for Canada. That's the reality that we're looking at today, Mr. Speaker. The former finance minister said no more than $40 billion of deficit. The Prime Minister pushed her aside to listen to Mark Carney. Will the Minister of Industry please tell us what Mark Carney's deficit will be when it's presented in 2 hours? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I have a huge amount of respect for the member for Louis Saint Laurent, and as my colleague has already said, we will be presenting the fall economic statement later today, Mr. Speaker. A fall economic statement that'll be there for families. It's an economic statement that'll be there for workers, an economic statement that'll be there for industry, but also, Mr. Speaker, an economic statement that'll be important. And we're expecting that the Conservatives will be ready to support it so that we can face the threat from the United States, Mr. Speaker. Canadians expect better than slogans, Mr. Speaker. Canadians expect actions. Will the Conservatives have the courage to defend Canada and to vote with the government to prepare Canada for the future, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard that Liberals are a shiver looking for a spine to crawl up, and we're seeing this play out in real time as they've let postal workers and, in fact, all workers down. At this time, when Canada Post CEOs got bonus after bonus while denying fair wages to its workers, this government continues to betray people and cave to corporate interests. As the former Deputy Prime Minister said, Canadians know when their government is not working for them, but working for themselves. The Democrats know where we stand. We stand up for workers every single day. When will this government do the same?
The Honourable Minister of Labour and for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, Canada went through a 4-week postal strike where letter carriers, who we do thank for their service to Canadians and who I know we all have deep affinity for, were out for a very long time. Not only the government, but the Canada Industrial Relations Board has judged there to be a fundamental impasse in the negotiations. We have found an imaginative way forward, a way to get a collective agreement for Canada Post and its hardworking letter carriers.
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Mr. Speaker, they are not listening. The former Deputy Prime Minister said it best today. Canadians know when the government is working for them or for themselves. Well, the Liberals have made it clear where their focus lies. The Minister of Labor's out-of-touch response last week to postal workers is a slap in the face. They deserve safety at work and livable wages. People are tired of the Liberals and Conservatives siding with rich CEOs at their expense. Now Canadians want to know, will the Minister of Labour be the next to resign?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Labour and for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, as that member well knows, postal workers and Canada Post were struggling to find a path forward at the negotiating table. It had gone on for 4 weeks. Canadians were, quite rightly, whether they were in Indigenous or remote communities, whether they were small business persons, whether they were people expecting medicines, Mr. Speaker, we were being pressed to act. We found an imaginative way forward with an industrial inquiry commission. We will ensure that Canada Post operates for the holidays, Mr. Speaker, and we're glad that we did.
Good.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to talk about something that's on everybody's mind, and that is the Canadian Dental Care Plan. Mr. Speaker, 1 out of 4 Canadians skipped a visit to the dentist because of the cost. But thanks to the Canadian Dental Care Plan, more than 1 million Canadians now receive that care, and every day that number continues to grow. Mr. Speaker, applications for the Canadian Dental Care Plan opened for adults with a valid disability tax credit earlier this year. Can the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion please tell us how persons with disabilities are being helped by this important plan? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister for Diversity and Inclusion.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Dental Care Plan is already saving Canadians an average more than $730 per year. This will help almost 200,000 persons living with disabilities access dental care. Mr. Speaker, we know this is making a huge difference in the lives of people on the ground. We also know, Mr. Speaker, dental care is health care, and we will continue to make sure Canadians are getting the support that they need. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
This week, Prime Minister has lost control. Carbon Tax Carney wrote the fiscal update, filled it with poison pills, so he could blame the Finance Minister while pushing her off the fiscal cliff, so he can take her job and eventually the Prime Minister's job. The Finance Minister figured out the plan, so she resigned in protest. She said she no longer has confidence in this weak Prime Minister and Carbon Tax Carney's plan. If the Prime Minister's own caucus and cabinet don't have confidence in him, even though the leader of the NDP does, why should Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, in a moment where Canadians are looking for leadership, the Conservative asking the question can only come up with names to lobby towards his political opponents.
Colleagues, it is very important for us to just hear the question and hear the answer. The Honourable Minister, from the start.
From the top.
Mr. Speaker, the very best that the Conservatives can offer to this conversation is name-calling, mudslinging, not solutions to the problems that Canadians are facing. When I talk to people at home, they want their governments to be focusing on creating good jobs to make sure people can afford to put food on the table. They want to make sure that governments are advancing policies to invest in healthcare and housing. They want to make sure we're doing more to protect the environment. Every time we put policies on the table to accomplish these ends, the Conservatives throw their hands up in the air, vote against, and just sling mud towards their opponents. That is not what people in my community want. It is not what Canadians deserve. We're going to advance solutions that introduce real and meaningful changes that will benefit people who live in this country.
I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Dufferin-Caledon, please, to hold off on making comments while the other people have the floor. The Honourable Member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
He's right. After 9 years of that incompetent minister and the Prime Minister, Canadians are looking for leadership. Carbon Tax Carney's Canadian comeback fueled a fiscal feud for the former Finance Minister. Carney wrote the fiscal update, pushed insane inflationary spending, and brought in the 2-month tax trick while trying to blame the Finance Minister for taking Canada's finances off a cliff. Will he stop passing the blame on to women in his caucus and call a carbon tax election now so common sense Conservatives can give the power back to Canadians? The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I was wrong before when I said all they had was name calling. Apparently they have alliteration as well. But Mr. Speaker, that is not going to put food on the table for people who need it in my community or his. It is not going to put a roof over the head of people who are vulnerable in this country. Mr. Speaker, if he wants to make this argument about whether women will be supported, I wonder if he has ever approached the leader of the Conservative Party about using hashtags to specifically attract the attention of men who hate women to support him online. I wonder if he's asked questions about why he's canceled the investigation as to who was behind it, or perhaps it's because he knows it was the Conservative leader himself.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, everything is out of control. Home prices have doubled. Food bank use is seeing 2 million users in a single month. And the real fiscal advisor to this Prime Minister wrote the financial update for this afternoon and included a temporary 2-month tax trick and is set to smash through the massive $40 billion deficit promise that was made by the finance minister. When they tried to blame the economic vandalism on her, she quit, saying that she doesn't have confidence in this prime minister. Now, they can't tell us how much they've spent. They can't tell us who's in charge. How can anyone have confidence in this prime minister?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives seem to know the cost of everything but the value of nothing. They do not see value in investing in childcare, which has not only reduced costs for families, but led to the largest increase in women's participation in the labor force in the history of this country. They don't seem to believe there is value in investing in social housing, in public housing, in affordable housing, so everyone in this country can have a roof over their head. They don't believe in the value of the Canada Child Benefit, which is ensuring middle-class families in this country can put food on the table. So before he continues to sling mud and arrows on this side of the House, he perhaps should look inward and ask why he is not even allowed to advocate on behalf of his community, because his leader has said that's just not in order.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Yeah, we talk about having confidence. This is coming from a minister who said just today that he's not going to continue to serve in the cabinet of that prime minister. Just like the finance minister who said she doesn't have confidence, or the 7 other ministers over there, or the 1 in 5 Liberal MPs who said they don't have confidence in this NDP Liberal prime minister who broke housing, who broke immigration, who broke our finances in this country. These Liberals talk about cost, but they have absolutely no idea how much they've spent. No government has ever spent so much to achieve as little as this government has. We know why the NDP leader has confidence in this prime minister. It's for his pension. But why should Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague is right about one thing. I did announce this morning that I'm not going to be seeking re-election. But I can tell you, if he thinks that's a matter of confidence, I can tell him it's that I have confidence I am going to be the best father to my kids that I could possibly be for the rest of my life. And that is what is most important to me. But Mr. Speaker, while I have the floor, I should say thank you for the opportunity to engage in the tete-a-tete over the years. This may be one of the last opportunities that I have, and I want to use it to make this point. Canadians want governments to invest to increase the quality of life that they get to enjoy. We seem not to be able to agree on that basic tenet. On this side of the House, we will put measures in place to support families, not advocate for cuts.
The Honourable Member for Berthier, Masquinongé. I would like to quote the Deputy Prime Minister: Canadians know when we're working for them, and they know when we're focusing on ourselves. Mr. Speaker, she's right. 71% of Quebecers believe that the GST vacation and the Prime Minister's cheque are electioneering measures. Democracy loses out as a whole when so many Quebecers believe that a Prime Minister is trying to buy them off. Will the Prime Minister finally realise that there is a limit to putting Liberal priorities ahead of the common good? The Honourable Minister for Innovation. Mr. Speaker, we have no lessons to learn from the Bloc Québécois. If the Bloc were truly here for Quebecers, they would vote for their best interests. For months, the Bloc is contributing to the Conservative tactics of blocking Parliament. to stop bills that would make Quebec a better place. Instead of trying to squabble, can the Bloc finally go beyond squabbles and actually work for Quebecers to allow this parliament to function? Quebecers expect better from the Bloc, and will always be here on this side of the House to defend Quebecers. The Honourable Member for Berthier, Masquinongé. Deputy Prime Minister's resignation confirms that the Prime Minister has gone too far in pushing for Liberal measures at all costs. She has confirmed that the Prime Minister is no longer legitimate. He cannot move forward with a full economic update without a finance minister. She confirms that the Prime Minister cannot continue to govern without a new plebiscite from the people. The Deputy Prime Minister has confirmed all of this. Will the Prime Minister finally trigger an election? The Honourable Minister for Labour. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois simply rejects economic updates without having read it. That's why they voted against the Canada childcare benefit. That's why they voted against our dental plan for Canadians. And many Quebecers are benefiting from these programs. They voted against the guaranteed income supplement. They systematically vote against all assistance for Quebecers. So we shouldn't be surprised that the Bloc, once again, is rejecting our measures that will help Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
Carbon Tax Carney is the Prime Minister's official economic advisor, and his plan was always to push out the Finance Minister and take her place. Let's look at his advice so far. He forced her to bring in the GST tax trick. Carney also forced through insane inflationary spending, smashing through that $40 billion guardrail. Carney's economic plan is so bad, the Finance Minister resigned in protest rather than humiliate herself into reading his homework. Now nobody knows who the Finance Minister is. Mr. Speaker, enough is enough. Why won't the Prime Minister do the only honourable thing left and let Canadians decide for themselves in a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Another day, another attack against Canadians from the Conservative Party of Canada. Anytime someone steps up who disagrees with their vision for Canada, what do? Personal attacks, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve better than the slogans and personal attacks that we get from Conservative members of Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
The attacks on this government's economic record are coming from inside the Liberals' own cabinet, Mr. Speaker. And it looks more and more like Carbon Tax Carney's plan to push out the Prime Minister is working as well, too. For Carbon Tax Carney, it's always been profits over people. Look at his record. Since he became the top economic advisor to the PM, he's moved his own company's headquarters to New York City. He got caught unethically lobbying the UK government. And his firm Brookfield is now looking for $10 billion in taxpayers' money for a new investment fund, which would be managed by Brookfield, his own company. Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve better than this government in shambles. Why not call a carbon tax election and let Canadians decide for themselves?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is the People's House, and in it we should be debating things that are pertinent to the administration of government. But what we hear from the House Leader from the Conservative Party of Canada is attacks on Canadians, Mr. Speaker. The person he's talking about is not a sitting member of Parliament, is not a cabinet minister. It is someone that they are attacking simply because they do not share their vision of Canada. Mr. Speaker, every single Canadian deserves better than what we hear from the opposition today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
The Prime Minister's lost control. Hours before delivering a fiscal update, the Finance Minister resigned, joining 1/5 of the Liberal caucus and saying she doesn't have confidence in the Prime Minister either. And there's only one person left keeping this Prime Minister in power, and that's the leader of the NDP. The fall budget is scheduled to be tabled in 54 minutes, and we don't even know who the finance minister
Eric
is.
Duncan,
The Liberals' own cabinet order on succession states if it's not her, it's the industry minister, but he says he doesn't want to. So that means it's supposed to go to the disgraced member from Edmonton Centre. The question is, will the other Randy be Canada's next finance minister? And how much is he investing in fraud?
Again, I've asked members to please not do indirectly what they can't do directly by referring to a member by their first name. The Honourable Leader, order. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, all we see from Conservative members of Parliament is personal attacks and mudslinging against Canadians. Mr. Speaker, what we all need to be doing right now is standing united for our country, making sure that we are protecting the Canadian economy, Canadian jobs, and making things a little bit easier for Canadians. We look forward to presenting the fall economic statement later this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Halifax West.
Speaker, our government takes the safety of children seriously. That's why we put forward a comprehensive plan to bring Canada into the 21st century and change our online world, making it safer for kids and better for all. The Conservatives are blocking the plan and they're standing in the way of a better future for our kids online. Parents want the Online Harms Act. Experts want the Online Harms Act. Can the Minister of Justice explain why C-63 must be passed to keep our kids safe?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, last week I asked for unanimous consent to split the Online Harms Act and advance the child protection measures as soon as possible. Every single party got on board except for the Conservatives. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party said no to forcing the removal of child sexual abuse material from the internet. They said no to Amanda Todd's mother, Carol. They said no to Rehtaeh Parsons' mother and all the other parents who are begging us to act. While Conservative inaction keeps child sexual abuse material online, on this side of the House, the government will continue to fight for victims, parents, and kids to keep them safe.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. The Prime Minister has completely lost the plot. He's lost control of immigration, of our borders, of public finances. He's also lost the confidence of 20 or 40 members of his caucus. He's lost the confidence and trust of his right-hand woman, the former Minister of Finance. The Prime Minister has lost everything. Will he finally let go and trigger an election so that Canadians can take back control of their future? The Honourable Minister for Immigration. For Innovation, rather. Mr. Speaker, I am not a new minister of anything, not immigration or anything else. We have no lessons to learn from the Conservatives. Today, what the government will table is an economic update that will be here to invest in Canadians, invest in industry, invest in our workers. But Mr. Speaker, what we've seen today during question period is deplorable. Canadians who are watching us today expect better from the official opposition. Now is the time to work together, to defend our country, to be ready for the next US administration. It's disappointing to see that the opposition is playing political games on a day like today. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, I can't quite believe what I just heard from the Minister for the, well, not the Minister for Finance, he said no, but the Minister for Innovation. The Minister is out of control. His former right-hand woman was very striking in her letter. We have to preserve our fiscal capacity against the United States. It's pursuing a policy of aggressive economic nationalism. We need to recognize the gravity of the moment. The situation is dire. Canadians need to work. So what do we need? The Honourable Minister for Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, it's not by shouting slogans that this member will claim to create unity in our country. Our government has a serious plan to move forward. We will, through our full economic statement, provide for prosperity for all Canadians, and we will be here to protect Canadians against any potential threat.
The honourable member for Peterborough Kawartha.
The Prime Minister is spiraling so bad, and his obsession for power is dangerous. It's actually dangerous, and it is killing people every day. In Peterborough, and the Peterborough and area families are suffering the greatest rates of food insecurity ever recorded. Do you know what food insecurity means, Mr. Speaker? Starvation, hunger, children. Enough. This is as serious as it gets. The finance minister quit hours before she was supposed to do this, and she doesn't have confidence in this prime minister. No one does. This man is a disgrace, and we need an election now.
Ask member please to be very judicious in referring to any member in this place. Order.
She was just speaking the truth.
Order. The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we've made investments to ensure that Canadians, including those in Peterborough Kawartha, have the support that they need, whether that be through affordable childcare, whether that be through an HST holiday, Mr. Speaker. The people of Peterborough Kawartha can rely on us, can know that we on this side of the House will fight for them when their Member of Parliament will do everything they can to oppose these supports.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver Quadra.
Mr. Speaker, children in Canada are just not safe online. Our government wants to join the many countries that have now adopted online safety regulations. Yet the Conservatives are preventing our Online Harms Act from moving forward. In fact, shockingly, they're blocking our efforts to remove child sex abuse material from the internet. How disgusting. Can the Justice Minister please describe the importance of Bill C-63 to parents and children, and explain why Canadians so urgently need this law now?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, the Online Harms Bill is the product of 4 years of consultation. It is comprehensive legislation that will remove child sex abuse material from the internet. By blocking that very act, the Conservatives have made a clear choice that they will not prioritize the safety of our kids. They don't stand with parents. Amanda Todd's mother, Carol, said she's been waiting 12 years for this type of change. We need to pass this legislation to do right by Carol and every other parent of every other child who suffered abuse online. The question for Canadians and for that party is, will they stand with us and keep kids safe?
The Honourable Member for North Island Powell River.
The Marriage After 60 pension clause is dated, sexist, and unfair. All parties agree it should be eliminated. But the Liberals have sat on their hands and let veterans and their spouses down. The Liberals' former deputy leader said it best: Canadians can tell when the government is focused on themselves and not on real people. And failing to remove this clause proves it. When will the Liberals stop labeling women gold diggers and get rid of this archaic, sexist clause?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister for Veterans Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question and also take a moment to thank the members of the Canadian Armed Forces for their service. Mr. Speaker, when a person serves in the military, we all recognize that their family serves with them. Our government is sensitive to the situation of widowed spouses who have married veterans after the age of 60. And our government is committed to improving and supporting members of their family as we move forward. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, that's a bunch of bullshit.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my last question in 2024. I think of the IPCC report. I'm sorry.
You resigning too?
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
alcoholic?
colleagues, really. I'd like to just hear the honourable member. She's at the far end of the room. It's difficult for me to hear. And I would like her to
We don't want to hear
please
her.
start again. The honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my last question in 2024, I think of the IPCC sixth assessment report that if we do not globally reduce emissions dramatically, peak before and see dramatic reductions, at the latest, this is quote, at the latest before 2025, we will shoot way past the Paris Agreement targets, way past 2 degrees Celsius, and face climate disaster. I think of the words in that film, The Age of Stupid. What were we thinking? To avoid the opportunity to save ourselves when we had the chance. Can the Honourable Minister give us any excuse, but perhaps this question period answers its own question?
She might be drunk again. Is that a timer in her hand? What the fuck is she doing with the timer in
The
her
Honourable
hand?
Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the honourable colleague for her question. I would like to remind her that everything we've done since we've been in power in 2015 has meant a 43% decline in emissions in Canada, Mr. Speaker. Greenhouse gas emissions are at their lowest level in 25 years, 27 years, in fact, Mr. Speaker. Our plan is working. We're helping the economy, we're creating jobs, and we're fighting pollution.
I believe that's it. I believe that's it, everybody. Thank you. God bless. Like and subscribe. Have a great day, everybody.